How Weinstein's complicity machine came crashing down. New York Times reporter Emily Steele concedes she was petrified before meeting Bill O&apos Reilly to discuss allegations of sexual harassment, including a $32 million settlement with one woman. When she and colleague Michael Schmidt did meet him in his lawyer&apos office, he wouldn't&apos make eye contact with her, only Schmidt. It was one of many details offered during Uncovering Sexual Harassment, a live-streamed Times Talks event last night in Los Angeles, featuring Steele, colleagues Twohey and Jodi Kantor, and actress Ashley Judd, who went on the record for the paper about Harvey Weinstein. Judd&apos co-panelists are part of the team that&apos broken big stories on O&apos Reilly and Weinstein, among others, and surely had a big role in inspiring Time magazine&apos Person of the Year, namely the women who have come forth courageously, or the silence breakers. Moderated by Susan Dominus, another Times reporter, it was a window onto basic and precise journalism on the most sensitive of topics, ultimately raising the key questions of potential impact. For those who don't&apos get the way quality reporters and editors work, this could serve as a quickie primer. For those in the business, it offered tips on dealing with victims of this sort, including the utter necessity of getting out of the office and meeting people face to face. Your Twitter feed won't get you to these sagas. Your boss has to spend money to get you places. Several of the reporters conceded that, when they left college and came into the workforce during the past 25 years, they truly thought most problems had been dealt with. They were so very wrong. The cerebral Judd, a Kennedy School grad who&apos now picking up another graduate degree, this in public policy at the University of Southern California, was good on why she came forward to Kantor and Twohey. It all started with a call to a movie set in Berlin from Nicholas Kristof, the columnist whom she knows well from advocacy work. He asked if she would talk to some colleagues. She said she just knew instantly, this is about Harvey, accentuating a given name now synonymous with sexual predation. Kantor gave the outlines of Weinstein building a complicity machine, and thus of the collective failure of many institutions, all knowing something about his actions. To what degree that various systems, from politics to Hollywood, enable it? How did Harvey Weinstein exploit people? That machine is detailed in their latest knockout piece on Weinstein that went online late Tuesday. As for the media, Twohey said, Harvey wasn't&apos just targeting female victims over the year. He was cultivating relationships, from politics to Hollywood to media. She referenced his relations with news organizations and journalists and his ability to trade on juicy gossip in exchange for, in part, shielding him and for media digging up dirt on his accusers. It's pretty remarkable. He was calculated and smart in creating allegiances and relationships he used as cover for his bad behavior. Those included poking into the personal lives of accusers and reporters looking into him. It all, said Kantor, instilled a certain fear of failure, namely that his slimy tactics would work. They firmed up a sense of professional responsibility, a desire to get a big story right and a growing appreciation of the fragilities of the American workplace, including the frequently frustrating inaction of human resource departments, the reporter underscored. People rationalized Weinstein&apos behavior internally by saying that, well, this was his private life and missing what was gross workplace harassment and sexual assault, said Kantor. And there was the presumption that women were slutty and were involved in consensual affairs. During a question period came one about male responses, with an audience member suggesting her male friends aren't&apos as interested as women in the revelations. The reporters didn't&apos agree, be it via the interest of the men with whom they work or those they know outside the paper. Nevertheless, last night &apos live stream suggested that, at least at this one event, it was a dominantly female audience. The challenges are clear, whether they involve a scoundrel like O&apos Reilly, who has settled 6 cases for $45 million and continues to claim he and apos is a victim of a politically motivated campaign, or involve others whose names we don't know. Call them the silent harassed majority, while wondering if some of them will also become silence breakers. Near the end, there was an audience question about how the reporting has obviously focused on high-profile abusers and harassers. What about others? It and apos an obvious query. What about the lack of recourse for low-income workers? That might give pause before we nod our heads when we hear words like reckoning and watershed. There would seem to be a tremendous amount of tough, systematic strategizing and work to be done through the American workplace, whether it and apos a famous network television newsroom or some suburban fast food joint. Stay tuned, said Kantor, seemingly alluding to what might be coming down the paper and apos editorial pipeline. There is a lot more journalistic work to do. Indeed. But, as the 1-hour session personified at minimum, the much reviled, allegedly fake news peddling mainstream media is toiling hard, fairly and honorably in bringing awful realities to light. Kudos are justifiably coming, and awards will follow, but the societal ramifications for most women will be fascinating to divine in the many years ahead. RT on the Russian Winter Olympics ban. If you think that RT, the Russian government-run TV operation, plays it straight, you should have watched yesterday and apos coverage of Russia being banned from the Winter Olympics. Let and apos start and end with this. The move was derided as some U.S.inspired, anti-Russian conspiracy by Jim Judriz, a very conservative fellow who is identified as a former U.S. diplomat and who once described himself to ABC News as pro-life, pro-gun, pro-traditional marriage, pro-immigration control, anti-war, pro-privacy, pro-tax reform, anti-phony free trade deals. He said somebody in the United States is really orchestrating this, though he said he has no proof of same, while the two anchors in the studio cooled and apos have been more sympathetic. He asserted that there is no evidence that the doping has been known to those at a high level of the Russian government. He intimated it and apos payback for the allegation of Vladimir Putin interfering in the 2016 presidential campaign. Seeing is believing, so here. And if you want to read his defense of Confederate monuments, call to prosecute public officials in sanctuary cities or generally bemoan the decline of America on virtually every front, there and apos lots of craziness right here on his site. Reality check. RT's Christine Brennan writes in USA Today, Russia has been suspended from the 2018 Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea. The most diabolical state-sponsored doping machine of our time, and the worst since East Germany a generation ago, has finally received the punishment it deserves. For RT bookers, Brennan can be reached at brennan@usatoday.com. She will counter your bogus narrative. Google snipes at Amazon as Bloomberg reports. Alphabet Incorporated's Google pulled support for its YouTube video service from Amazon.com Incorporated streaming media devices, citing the internet retailer's failure to make Amazon Prime Video available through Google's gadgets and the recent halt of the sale of some Nest products on its website. The Morning Babel Trump and friends focused on what it sees as the courage follow-up on a campaign promise of their guy declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel and move the U.S. Embassy there, though it did note the potential for violence. It also continued its daily hand-wringing over an FBI agent who was working with Robert Mueller in Let Go after sending out what could be deemed anti-Trump tweets. It extrapolates seamlessly from that tidbit to assert the Mueller investigation is unwarranted, out of control and too expensive. Morning Joe on MSNBC was taken, and rightly so, with the Alabama appearance last night of Steve Bannon, who were on a nasty riff about Mitt Romney being among the Republican establishment types against Roy Moore. He got into tricky area of noting that neither Romney nor kids did military service, which would be considered unbelievable chutzpah in neither Jerusalem or Tel Aviv given how Trump, the guy Bannon sees as his having masterminded into the White House, got 5 Vietnam